fog, thick, heavy, and all-consuming. It was as if the world had been swallowed by a ghostly veil, leaving only shadows and whispers in its wake. It clung to Denise like a shroud as she stepped out of the car, the headlights useless against the oppressive blanket. The fog seemed to absorb the light, turning it into a dull, lifeless glow. The old hotel loomed ahead, a shadowy silhouette against the grey, its neon sign flickering erratically. The building seemed to breathe with the fog, its contours shifting and blurring in the dim light. A chill ran down her spine, a tremor of unease. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, as if the fog itself was alive, watching her every move.
"This was not my plan. Not tonight," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the muffled sounds of the night.
Yet here she was, drawn in by some unseen force, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. It was as if the fog had a will of its own, pulling her towards the unknown. The air hung heavy with moisture, each breath tasting faintly of salt and something else she couldn't quite place. It was a taste that lingered on her tongue, a reminder of the sea and the mysteries it held. Fear, perhaps? Or maybe just the fog playing tricks on her senses. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. She clutched her purse tighter, her fingers closing around the small, hard object inside. It was her only source of comfort in this strange, otherworldly place. A talisman against the encroaching darkness, or perhaps a catalyst for the storm brewing within her. She couldn't decide which, but she held onto it as if her life depended on it. With a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy oak door and stepped inside. The door creaked ominously, echoing through the empty halls. The warmth that greeted her was unexpected, almost suffocating in its intensity. It wrapped around her like a blanket, contrasting sharply with the cold, damp fog outside. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and something akin to forgotten dreams. It was a smell that spoke of age and neglect, of stories long since abandoned. She shivered despite the heat, a sense of foreboding settling over her like the oppressive fog outside. It was as if the warmth was a trap, luring her into a false sense of security. The lobby was deserted, the only sound the faint ticking of an ancient grandfather clock in the corner. The silence was almost tangible, pressing in on her from all sides. Its brass pendulum swung back and forth with hypnotic regularity, marking the agonizingly slow passage of time. Each tick seemed to echo through the empty space, a reminder of her isolation. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the rhythmic tap, tap, tap of her heels against the worn marble floor. Each step was a reminder of her presence in this eerie, forgotten place. Each step echoed through the emptiness, amplifying her solitude. The sound seemed to bounce off the walls, creating a symphony of loneliness. She felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest, threatening to choke her. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, a sense of impending doom that hung over her like a dark cloud. Behind the high counter, a man sat hunched over a dusty ledger, his fingers tracing the faded ink of countless entries. His face, etched with the lines of countless forgotten stories, was barely visible beneath the dim glow of a stained glass lamp. The light cast eerie shadows, making his features appear almost ghostly. He peered at her over his spectacles, his eyes like two dark, fathomless pools, reflecting a lifetime of secrets and mysteries.
"Room for the night?"
he rasped, his voice a dry whisper that seemed to slither through the silence, filling the room with an unsettling presence. Denise hesitated, a flicker of doubt momentarily eclipsing her resolve. She glanced around, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on her. Turning back now would be the sensible thing to do, the safe thing. But something about this place, this moment, held her captive. But the fog seemed to press in on her, urging her forward, whispering promises of something she couldn't quite grasp. It was as if the mist itself was alive, beckoning her into its depths.
"Yes, just for the night."
The old man nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. There was a knowing look in his eyes, as if he understood more than he let on. He pushed a registration form towards her, his fingers gnarled and twisted like the ancient roots of a long-forgotten tree. Each movement seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. The pen felt strangely heavy in her hand, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on her. It was as if the pen itself carried the burden of countless untold stories. She scribbled her name, the letters blurring under her gaze. Her hand trembled slightly, the act of writing feeling oddly significant. Was it her imagination, or did the ink seem to bleed into the paper, as though eager to absorb her secrets along with her identity? The ink spread slowly, like a dark stain creeping across her soul.
Second floor, room 207. Don't lose yourself in the fog, little bird. It has a way of stealing things it has no right to claim. The fog is treacherous, always lurking, always waiting.
His words barely audible, he produced a brass key, its surface dull and cold beneath her touch. The key felt ancient, as if it had unlocked countless doors before this one. Denise took the key, her fingers brushing against his for a brief moment. She turned and walked toward the staircase, each step echoing in the silent hallway. The fog outside seemed to thicken, pressing against the windows, as if trying to seep inside. She reached the second floor and found room 207. The door loomed before her, its number barely visible in the dim light. She hesitated for a moment, then inserted the key into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a dark room beyond. She stepped inside, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. The fog outside seemed to whisper, its voice barely audible, as if sharing secrets only she could hear. Denise stood in the center of the room, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on her. She knew this night would be unlike any other, a night where the fog would reveal its hidden truths. The hallway was dark, lit only by a single flickering bulb that cast long, dancing shadows on the faded wallpaper. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. Denise shivered, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on her. She could feel the presence of something or someone lurking just beyond the edge of her vision, always out of sight, but never out of mind. Each creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind through the eaves, sent a jolt of fear through her. The house seemed alive, whispering secrets and stories of the past, stories that Denise was not sure she wanted to hear. Room 207. The door creaked open as if reluctant to reveal its secrets. It was as though the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to step inside and uncover what lay hidden within its walls. The air inside was stale and heavy, thick with the scent of dust and memories. It felt as if time had stopped in this room, preserving every moment, every emotion, in a thick, suffocating blanket of stillness. Moonlight filtered through a gap in the heavy curtains, illuminating the room in a patchwork of silver and shadow. The light danced across the room, casting eerie shapes and forms that seemed to move and shift with every flicker. The furniture was old, the velvet upholstery worn thin with age, the patterns faded like forgotten dreams. Each piece seemed to tell a story of its own, a story of better days long past. She tossed her purse onto the worn velvet chaise longue and sank onto the edge of the bed, the springs groaning in protest. The bed felt as ancient as the room itself, a relic of a time long gone. Closing her eyes, she inhaled deeply, trying to calm the storm raging within her. The memories were close now, just beneath the surface, threatening to overwhelm her. The silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic beating of her own heart. It was a silence that seemed to amplify every thought, every fear, until it was almost unbearable. It was here in this room that the memories came flooding back. Memories of laughter and tears, of joy and sorrow, all mingling together in a bittersweet symphony. Unbidden, unwanted, yet impossible to ignore. They were a part of her, woven into the very fabric of her being, and no matter how hard she tried, she could never escape them. Section 4. The Weight of Silence.
Michael.
His name echoed in the silence, a bittersweet ache in her chest. They had been young, so full of dreams and aspirations. A lifetime ago, it seemed. Or perhaps just a heartbeat. Time had a way of distorting, especially in the clutches of the fog.
He had been my rock, my confidant, the one person I could always count on, the one person I thought I could never live without.
She remembered the laughter, the stolen kisses, the whispered promises etched onto the fabric of their souls. Their lives had been a tapestry woven together with threads of joy and sorrow, triumph and despair. They had weathered storms that would have ripped others apart, their love a beacon in the darkness, until the silence descended.
It had started subtly, a gradual distancing, a withdrawal into the shadows of unspoken words and unshared burdens.
The laughter faded, replaced by a strained politeness that cut deeper than any argument. The weight of their unspoken words hung between them, a chasm impossible to bridge. Section 5. Ghosts of Decisions Past. Denise ran a hand through her hair, the events of the past few weeks playing through her mind like a broken record. The fight, the accusations, the tears that had dried on her cheeks, leaving behind only the bitter residue of regret.
I had chosen my career over our relationship, the allure of success proving too strong to resist. Or perhaps it was just an excuse, a way to escape the suffocating silence that had become our reality.
Either way, the damage was done. Michael had begged her to stay, his eyes reflecting the pain that tore at her own heart. But she had turned away, the echo of her own ambitions drowning out the desperate plea in his voice.
I told myself it was for the best, that we would both be happier in the long run.
But the truth whispered in the shadows of her soul, a constant reminder of the love she had sacrificed on the altar of ambition.